Hi guys, so in this video we're going to be going through the paintwork on these motorbike fairings. Now a couple of these are fiberglass Street Fighter fairings, and then we've got the original tank over there as well that we're going to be painting. Now the first stage for this is we're going to be putting down some 1K Kapci high build primer after we've tack ragged these off. We're going to be putting that on through my Iwata W400 Bell Area, which is a 1.3. Now, the reason that I've gone for a 1K Kapci black high build for these is, one, we're doing them in a black pearl, so it's going to help the colour cover up a lot faster, and also for the fact that these have already been repaired and add a primer coat over these fiberglass ones I'm just tack ragging off now, because a few of these that are in the grey here needed a few little bits of fine filler just to smooth out the fiberglass and get them looking nice and flat for when we put the paint down. Now the other bits and pieces that are in black, so the belly pan and the little infill panel there, and also the tank, all those are off the original bike, and the paintwork was really good on those, so what we've done with those is give them a good sand down with a P320 to make sure they're nice and smooth, they're fully keyed up and ready to take the primer to give us a nice base to put our base coat black pearl on top of. Now we're going to be doing a few things different in this. As I said, we're going to be using the Kapci 1K high build instead of using a 2K high build, because at this point really it's more of just a sealer coat and help us for the colour when we put the colour down. And also we're going to be using some Waterborne in this video, which is a ProSpray Waterborne, which I got from a local supplier, just to give a bit of a try. It's been a bit of a while since I've used the Waterborne or the water-based systems, and I have to say, the ProSpray one, I did actually quite like it for this job. I don't know what it's like for the refinishing side with accident repairs, colour matches, etc. If any of you guys use it, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of it, what it's like for colour matches and stuff like that. So for the primer stroke sealer coat on this job, we're using the Kapci 1K high build primer. Now I've gone for the black because we're shooting a black pearl that's got a lot of brilliant red pearl in it. So it's going to give us a nice base to put this down on. Now the Kapci 1K high build is a 1-to-1, so 1 part primer with 1 part thinner. Now I'm only putting 2 coats down because literally this is just a sealer coat. It's going to help us with any frying up. It's going to help us a lot better to get some nice even coverage when we put the Waterborne over the top, and it's just to basically get everything the same colour and give us a nice sealed coat over all the panels. Now roughly my settings for this, I'm putting this down at roughly the same as what I'd put lacquer down through this gun, so you're looking around about 2.5 to 3 turns out, and I'm putting it down at about 2 bar, so it lays pretty nice and smooth. And then all I did in between doing this and actually putting the Waterborne base coat down was use a P600 softback sanding sponge with a tiny bit of water. Didn't go mad, didn't get them in a swimming pool and get them really wet or anything like that. I just gave them a light spray with a mister bottle and then went over them, give them a quick rub over just to make sure there was no dirt nibs or anything, and then panel wiped and pre-cleaned them up straight ready to take the actual Waterborne base coat. So we went over and we're just giving these 2 really nice, smooth, wet, sealed coats. So as I said, it's just basically as a general sealer coat. It's not something that we need to put a lot of primer on because we've done extensive repairs or anything. All the primer work for repair wise has been before I actually shot this footage. And these were a bit of a quick turnaround job, so unfortunately I didn't have time to actually shoot the footage on the little repairs on that nose fairing, which is that little light panel that looks like a light mask, and also the rear tail fairing, because to be honest, bar a few little bits of fine filler where the fiberglass had been blocked down, because it had a few pinholes and a few wobbles in it. I'm sure you guys that have worked on fiberglass before know exactly what I mean. Some fiberglass molds aren't the best, so they do require a little bit of tickling up, and most of the time you can get away with just using a little bit of fine filler. All I did was block all these panels out with a P180 to make sure they were nice and flat and smooth them out and get a finish that's going to match the plastic on the rest of the bike, because what you don't want is a really nice smooth metal looking tank, really nice smooth looking belly pan, an infill panel, and then you've got a headlight fairing and also a tail fairing then that look really obviously fiberglass because they've got a lot of wobbles and they've got a lot of misshape to them. So for me, I'll P180 on a block them all out as smooth as I can get all the lines nice and crisp and clean, round all your edges off, and then I gave them coat of primer, which then showed up any little pinholes or anything like that. So then I went around, did all my little pinholes, did all the little edges and little bits that needed a little bit of a tweak, and then we're just putting this little bit of a sealer coat of primer down now, which is going to save us not only time with having to reprime these and fully block these down again, but also it's going to save us a bit of material when we come to put the base coat down, because obviously these are already 99% in the colour of the base coat that we're putting over the top. Now, the base coat colour is something that the customer asked for specially. It's not a colour that we add a straight colour off a scheme. The base coat colour for these basically is a black tinter straight off the scheme, and then it's add 100 ml of brilliant red pearl tinter added to it, so that in normal light these panels, when we're finished with them, the look that we're after is we're after a real nice high gloss black look. And then in the sun, what we want is for these to really pop some brilliant pearl through on all these edges and the styling lines and all the swage lines of these panels, so it gives a real nice crisp clean look, just to freshen up a bit of a Street Fighter job that this guy's doing on an old bike that he's had for a while. So for him, it's just to give it a bit of a clean fresh look, and we get to make a nice little video out of these, showing you guys a little bit on this 1K high build, and also a little bit on some Waterborne for a change rather than the solvent base coat that we normally use. So during that section there, we've already gone round and we've got the first coat down, and then we'll give it roughly about 10-15 minutes to flash off. Now, being 1K, this does dry extremely quick, so it's handy for little jobs like this where you just need a sealer coat rather than you actually needing build because of repair work. And then once it's had that little time to flash off, we're then going to go straight round, put another nice full wet coat over all these panels, and then personally I left these to dry overnight with them being a 1K primer. And then, as I said before, the only prep that I did to these was just using a softback sanding sponge, nice and light and a little bit damp. Give these a quick rub around just to get rid of any dirt nibs. Ideally, for a job like this, you could use this as a straight sort of wet on wet primer, but with this being a black, and also I want it to be a nice, really clean looking paint job as well, with it being a black pearl. I did just give them that little light rub round with the softback sanding sponge, just to make sure that any little dirt nibs that were in it aren't going to show through in the final job, because with it being basically a jet black paint job with brilliant pearl shining through, the one thing that I didn't want was any little nibs or anything that were going to alter the look of the pearl or add any sort of like contamination that you can see in the finished job to the finished job, because, well, let's face it, we all like a nice clean job. Before I did this stage, as you'd see at the start, I did tack rag all these panels down. It's not something that I used to do for primer. I used to clean them down, give everything a good blow off and get them reasonably clean, and then start doing the prime work. Whereas now I found that, I don't know, maybe as I've got a bit more into the job and I've got a bit more conscious of my finish, and also, when you come to wet, flat and polish, if you can clean your job at every stage of the way as far as you can, then you're going to prevent any dirt, any contamination, anything in your final job as much as possible. So tack ragging and your prep wise, it is an extremely important part of the job. Years and years and years ago, when I first started painting, people used to say, the most important part of this job were the three P's, and that was preparation, preparation, and preparation. And I think the more you get into this job and the more you get into it, the more you realise that that is actually true, and it is actually the biggest part of refinishing, really. A gun finish is all good and well, but a gun finish is only going to come out as good as your prep work underneath it. So we're going to move straight on to the ProSpray Waterborne Basecoat at this stage. Now, The application method that I used for this was to do one full wet closed coat, and then while this was still wet, and as soon as I'd finished that wet coat, was to go straight back over with an effect slash drop coat to make sure that all those really fine pearls in the colour were really nice and evenly laid across the panel. And literally that was the job done on this tank. So this is just at the end of the wet coat here, and then you'll see I'm just moving a little bit further away, moving a little bit faster, just putting a nice drop coat just to make sure that all that pearl and those fine brilliant pearls are evenly distributed all over the surface, so that when this is dry it's got a nice even uniform finish. Now I did find that with this ProSpray, with it being a waterborne rather than a water-based, it did lay a lot like solvent. It went straight down. You could put a real nice full wet coat on without any issues. And obviously with it being waterborne, it does contain a small amount of solvents. So you still need to make sure that you have all the correct PPE on. You need still to have a decent, a minimum, I would say, a dual cartridge respirator that is rated for paint spraying. Don't just get a dust mask and stick that on, because dust mask will not save your lungs or save your health, anything when you're in a booth spraying. So make sure you've got a good mask on. You'll see that now I have got gloves on. A few mentioned that in recent videos, but I have managed to get some gloves organised for this video. Um, and you know, waterborne, water-based, solvent-based lacquer, primer, whatever you're using, you should really be using full PPE. Um, as best you can. Obviously, it's your health. If you don't wear it, that is entirely up to you. But you do, and you should wear it. And I found that as I've got older, I am more conscious of what I'm using, how I'm using it, and doing a bit more research into my PPE to make sure I've got the right kind of PPE on at all times whilst doing the job. Because I think, you know, it is a big part of this job. We do use a lot of hazardous chemicals, and a lot of these can easily enter your bloodstream through any open skin. Um, you obviously your eyes, your hands, etc. You know, a lot of these areas are exposed to these chemicals, and you really don't want to be getting these chemicals inside your body, because at some point, you know, there is a chance that they could start causing you problems. So we're coming to the end of the base coat stage now. As you can see, it's really nice and quick with this waterborne. It was just that one wet coat and one drop coat. Obviously, the sealer coat for the primer in black has helped, because it's meant that this is covered up really fast. And also, prepping it with the P600s meant that we've got no sanding scratches or anything that are going to show in the final finished product, which has enabled us to put less material on, save some time, and also save some money. The only thing that I needed to do after this was, obviously with this being waterborne, it still does need to be dried down. It won't dry on its own like solvent base will. It's the same as water based. You are going to need a bit of air moving across these panels to get this to dry down. Now, personally, I used a little hand air blower and just add some air, moving across these panels from one end of the booth to the other, and within about 5–10 minutes these are all nicely dried off. One thing to note is, and one thing that you don't want to do, is have your airflow directed directly at the paint on the panel. You want a nice flow of air across, not directly at. This will help prevent any of the metallics or pearls being disturbed when you're drying them down. So these are all the panels now. These have all been fully base coated up, and just having a quick walk around after drying these down just to make sure that everything's nice and dry. And we gave them a quick tack rag off before we get to the lacquer stage. Again, just with that air moving around the booth just to make sure that no dust, dirt or contaminants have landed on that base coat, so that when we put this lacquer down now, we can make sure it goes down nice and clean and nice and wet. So for the lacquer, I'm using the Iwata Supernova in a 1.3, and settings, I've got the fan turned 2.5 turns in from full, and I'm 4 turns out on the fluid. I did the BMW video. If you watch that, we used the same lacquer, the same gun, and I did that at around 3 turns out in the first coat, and that gave me a nice OEM finish when I was done. So I decided with this job to give it a bash at 4 turns out, because I wanted a real nice wet look to these panels. And as you can see, as this goes down, it really does wet up really fast. The lacquer over this waterborne base coat seemed to go down a lot smoother and a lot wetter straight off the gun. I did find that it didn't seem like it needed to put as much material going straight onto the panels to get that wetter finish. Now, the clear coat we're using again is the Kapci 6030 HS Clear, and I've just added a drop of 5% fast thinner just to help a little bit with these flowing out on the panels. I have to say, after using this a couple of times, I don't really think that you'd need a drop of thinner in, but I always like to put a little touch in, even if it's just that little 5%. I just find it helps it flow, or it might just be in my head, to be honest. But I do find that when you put that little touch in, even if it's just a drop, it just helps it flow out that tiny bit just before it flashes off, just to leave you that little bit of a flatter finish. So all we're going to be doing with these panels to finish is to put 2 full wet coats down. So the first coat's going to be a nice sealed wet coat. I then gave these, with it being a heavy wet coat for the first coat, I gave it around about, I'd say, 10 to 15 minutes flash off time. It was quite a nice warm day, it was about 25 degrees. So what I was trying to do really, more than anything, with that first coat being so wet, was basically prevent any solvent pop with the clear, because I found that with some of these HS clears, if you do go a bit heavy and a bit wet on your first coat, then go over too soon with your second coat, all the thinners and everything that are evaporating out of that first coat can cause a little bit of solvent pop in the final finish when it's dried down, and it might look really nice now in the booth, and you'll come in the morning and it'll have just broke the surface and popped the surface a tiny bit, and that's not something that I really want to do with these. I didn't want to be going down a full flat and polish route with these panels. All I did was basically give these a quick denib and polish the bits that are denibbed, and then these could go straight out the door because they were a really nice clean off the gun finish. And again, a lot of that comes down to you being really particular about your tack ragging. You can tack rag things once. If you've got it in you to tack rag it twice, tack rag it twice. So there's no reason why you can't. You know, you can use one side of your tack rag, go around them all, let the booth settle down for a few minutes while you go and mix some base coat up, or go and mix some clear coat up, come back in, and then when you've got your gun ready to start spraying, go around, give them a tack rag again with the other side of the tack rag that's still clean and fresh, which is going to leave you with a nicer, cleaner job. The cleaner and nicer your job, obviously, the less time you're going to be spending the next day, or if you've got a bake on your booth in the afternoon, flattening and polishing, you can just then give them a quick nib and polish, or if you've got them really clean and you've just got a tiniest little bit of dust in them, you know, if you had one really minute bit of dust in something like this tank, and it wasn't too particular of a job, as long as it's really small and you know it's not going to bug you too much, and it's not a high-end job, then you could leave that little bit of dust if you've got a nice glass off the gun finish. Now, for this second coat of clear, like I said, we've left this 10 to 15 minutes on a nice warm day to flash off, and then we're going over the same again, um, pretty much in the same style. We're not slowing anything down or speeding anything up. We are just going for a really nice full wet look, wet closed coat on these panels, and then as you can see, that's pretty much job done. Now I mixed up a 500ml mix at 2 to 1, so I had one full pot of mixed clear for this job, and as you'll see at the end of this, it was literally the last little drip in the bottom of the gun that was left, because I was putting 2 full wet coats on. But I have found that, as I've said in the past, that this Supernova does seem to use a lot of lacquer, and also it can be a bit tricky. A few of you asked about fan setups and stuff to get a nice finish with this, because if you put this on a full fan, it really doesn't have an even fan pattern. To get a nice even fan pattern with this spray gun, one thing you do need to do is turn the fan in around about 2.5 to 3 turns in from full. If you don't, it just doesn't give a nice even spray pattern. So yeah, overall I do like the gun. It does lay a real nice wet glass finish. It has taken a lot more getting used to than something like the Pro Light did, but that's not to knock it. It is a good gun, a little bit higher in the price range, but overall I've enjoyed using this gun, and we'll do a full, more in-depth review on this gun that I picked up soon for you guys, and maybe even soon I might look at picking up the Start 5000 so that we can put this, the Pro Light and the 5000 against each other, and I'll give you my thoughts on the three, and we'll do that based on finish, ease of use, price, setup, because I think all those things need to be worked into it. You can't just say, right, this one's this much, this one's this much, and they all lay like glass. So they're all a good gun, but I prefer this because it's the brand that I prefer. You know, we do want to make sure that it's an unbiased review, and I'll give you my thoughts on that when we get around to making that video. I've got a few other little bits and bobs of spray gun review videos that I'm in the process of editing up, and a few other products and material reviews, but for now I'm going to try and get a few more refinishing videos and a few more videos with some hints and tips and tricks, and also I was asked to get a bit more of the repair work, etc. in there, so I'm going to try and get back to a bit more back to basics with the channel and start from there and see where we go from there. So that's about it for this video, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this little video, and hope you also that you're enjoying the new style of videos with our new intro and a little bit of a new take to try and make these a little bit more watchable for you guys at home. So if you're new to the channel, thanks for watching. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks again for coming back to watch the videos, and I hope you're finding them helpful. If there's anything that you want to see in the videos in the future, please don't hesitate to let me know, guys, and I will do my best to get some videos made up. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.